It's probably the first time I've actually had a coach tell me to go out and whack someone. He basically looked at myself and Wayne Johnson and Jimmy Buckley, and he said, look, I don't want Alistair Clarkson to walk off the ground.
Well, welcome to our first Quarters Barra special, and we are joined today by one of the absolute greats of the VFL AFL, former Carlton and South Melbourne player, David Rhys-Jones. And the month of May is also International Prader-Willi Syndrome Awareness Month, a month that is very close to the heart of Rhys-Jones. His son, Cooper, suffers with PWS, a debilitating, life-threatening illness that affects 1 in 1,500 young Australians. The former AFL hardman and most reported player in AFL history, and we'll talk to him a bit about that, is facing his toughest battle now as he tries to raise awareness for PWS and launches a 15-day challenge on May 17, 2024, entitled Kicking Goals for PWS, 15 Memories in 15 Days. We're going to have a bit of a chat about his footy and where he thinks the game's going. But Rhys, welcome to the program, and can you tell us a bit about PWS?
Yeah, Prader-Willi Syndrome is a very rare genetic condition. It affects the 15th chromosome. The chromosomes are what really pieces together as people, and it's either deletion or partial deletion of that 15th chromosome, and that affects the hypothalamus in the brain, which is basically a regulator. It regulates your body temperature, your moods, your hunger, your thirst. Basically, it's just a regulator, and that doesn't really work properly with these kids. And where a lot of people have heard of it is they used to call it starvation syndrome, because these kids feel like, and adults as well, feel like that they're hungry all the time. They never get that full feeling in their tummy, and basically the connection's not there. So they're hungry all the time. So we have padlocks on fridges, and we have locks on pantries and different things. There's no food lying around at our house because we can't have that and create an unhealthy environment for Cooper. So it's a 24/7 situation. 1 in 15,000 to 20,000 who are born with this, no rhyme or reason. It's just a freak of nature, and one of those things. So my son Cooper is 20 now, but I'm an ambassador of the Prader-Willi Syndrome Association of Victoria, and we're raising funds to help the families and the people who do suffer with Prader-Willi Syndrome.
182 games, 112 goals. How are you holding up, David? How's the body? Because you had a crack, it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I'll put it this way: I just had both my knees replaced in January, and that's part and parcel of the wear and tear. I did stretch them right out to the end. To be perfectly honest, I was bow-legged in the end, and really bone on bone and crunching, and in a fair bit of pain. So I'm glad I had both of those replaced in January, and up and going now, and moving around quite well. I've actually lost a little bit of weight and been off the drink for a while. So I think the brewery over here is probably suffering a little bit because of that. But for me and Jimmy Buckley off the drink at the same time, it's a very rare occasion.
Miracles happen.
Yeah, they do, but I'll get back on it one of these days. But as at the moment, I'm just happily going along, and things are going well.
We'll get into a few of the highlights of your career, and I will say before we talk about the tribunal, this was a glittering career. I remember first seeing you as a South Melbourne. You're a skinny kid playing for South Melbourne, and these two arms just kept going up and hauling in the Sharon all day. And I thought, geez, this kid can play. And then I think you were there for a few years, and then you moved to Carlton, and premiership success came your way. But I have to ask you about the 25 tribunal appearances, because you did make there was a pretty regular, I think you had your own parking bay there at Tribunal House. How do you think you'd go these days, Rhys? Do you reckon you'd be playing at all?
Oh, look, I'd love to be playing these days. The scrutiny on players, I mean, back in our day, and I started off on a wing, and you get players that are sent out just to annoy you. I mean, obviously, coaches would send, if they thought a player had he could be got at in any particular way, and I'd have blokes pinching me and punching me behind the ear. The ball will be 50 metres away, and yeah, so, then you had to stick up for yourself a little bit, and it probably got me into trouble. The retaliator got caught, and that's how most of the times I actually got off 14 of the charges, so I was pretty good. I was guilty all the time, but I was lucky enough to get off 14 of them. And at a lot of those occasions, it showed, getting when the vision was there, showed me getting whacked first and turn around and whack them back. And back in those days, they just took that. Well, he's whacked him and he's whacked him back. That's even, throw the charge out. So. Yeah, but I'd love to just get out there and play footy and not have to worry about that sort of stuff, which the players do these days. Obviously there's cameras and umpires everywhere. So, and it's the rules are now a lot better to stop that type of stuff happening out on a footy field. So, as you say, I'd love to be able to, and I would have loved it then, but it was a different ball game back then, and I had a bit of a hot-headed reputation, and so coaches would send these spuds out at times to have a crack at you.
So you're happy with the way the game's going? I mean, fortunately, there's so much information now around about head trauma. So they're actually looking at making the head sacrosanct, protecting the player. And I think they're doing it's sort of a slow burn, but they're getting there. You like the way the game's going?
Yeah, well, in some ways, yeah. In some ways, I think the difficulty placed on umpires now is unbelievable and ridiculous. And I go to matches now, and it's a frustrating game to watch at times, and mainly because they've made it so bloody hard for the umpires. There's 4 of them out there now, and they still can't get it right. So, all the rule changes and what's a dangerous tackle, what's not a dangerous tackle, etc. It's just those little things, stand on the mark rule, stand sort of thing. I don't know. Gets a bit frustrating at times, but I do still enjoy the game, and now Carlton's winning a few games. It's a lot more enjoyable. So, I'm enjoying my footy at the moment.
Is it still a hard game?
Oh, it is, and you do see some physical clashes, and courage has still got to be shown. The Toby Green one a few weeks ago where 2 players going for the ball. I mean, I don't want to ever see a player have to stop and not go for the ball because he's scared he might injure someone or whatever. I mean, I think, one of the great things about our game is the courage of it and players, attacking the ball. That's one of the great skills of our game, and unfortunately injuries are going to happen. Injuries do happen. The head knocks, as you say, are a lot less these days than they were back in our day, and the old coat hanger was an art form back in our day, sort of thing, of like try and get around a tackle and you caught one across the chops, but that was the way it was played, and you played probably within the rules and right up until that, to as close as you could get to getting away with things. So, and players still do that now. I mean, young Kemp was criticised for, going along with the tackle the other day and forcing his head into the ground. But if you can get a free kick out of things, players have been doing that for years. I remember being up in on a Sydney game one day, and Adam Goods ran it. The ball was in between him and Matthew Cruiser, and I think it was, and Goods put his head down, picked the ball up, and ran into Matty Cruiser's shins, and basically got a head high free for and Matty Cruiser was standing there basically. So it gets a bit ridiculous at times, but players will play to get free kicks how the umpires are umpiring at the time. So that's always been the case.
Did you play much concussed? And I bring this up because we all remember the incident between yourself and Dennis Banks, 1986, I think it was. He got 3 weeks for that. I don't know what he'd get these days. Well, what do you think? 2 parts to that question, really.
Yeah, well, he'd get a lot of weeks these days, but you don't see that sort of thing anymore. But it's funny. I was on a radio station a few months back, and they asked me. They said, how many times were you concussed? And I said, well, I can tell you how many times I was knocked out, cold because you're put on a stretcher, and obviously that was but concussed. We didn't have a concussion test back then, so you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know how many times you actually were concussed, and you just kept playing. You'd brush it off. I had a lot of problems with blurred vision, especially on sunny days and days that Copperhead knock a little bit warmer sort of thing, and I used to have to go and lie down usually at half time for 10 minutes or so and just close my eyes and lie back and probably my brain just recalibrating itself, and I'd get up.
This
and
is
be
during
good.
a game?
Yeah. During a game, it happened a lot where you just get that little bit of blurred vision, and you weren't quite right, but you knew during the break you could get 10 minutes to lie down and just close your eyes, and you get up and you'd be right again, and you just went. That was just part and parcel of it. It was a masculine sport that you were shown not to show fear or show pain, or you put up with it and you put your body through that.
How are you now?
Depends who you ask. If you ask my wife, she'd give you a different answer to me. But I think I'm tracking along okay, and you do forget things from time to time. But look, I'm going to be 62 in a month, so you look at that too. So I've never looked at it. I always say, look, I wouldn't change the way I played at all. Back in those days, that's the way the game was played, and I love footy, and I still love footy now. But it's one of those games that I wouldn't have changed the way I played. So you cop what you got.
Tell me about the first time you reported.
I played my first year. I broke my leg in my fourth game at South Melbourne, and missed the rest of that season. And that was about round 9 in 1980, and got back. Did a pre-season and got back playing. Everything went well till about round 18 in 1981, and I got reported. I think it was 4 times in the one match, and I got reported.
But there's the runner there that you were reported for.
I got reported for hitting Croswell, kicking Croswell, hitting Crackers Keenan, and whacking the Melbourne runner. So,
but the Melbourne runner was Peter Smith, and there's a bit of irony attached to that.
Well, there is. I mean, Peter Smith was Norm Smith's son, so I whacked his kid and won his medal. So.
That's a great segue. Talk to us about 1987. Of course, Carlton avenged their defeat to Hawthorn the previous year. How big was the build-up to that, given what Hawthorn had done to you the year before? And also that day, you were a player who could play in various positions. That day, you were put into defence to play on Dermot Brereton, and you were a dominant force that day, as was Carlton. Just tell us about the build-up, what it meant to you to beat Hawthorn that day, and your performance.
Yeah, I think looking back on that year, obviously we trained. We had a really good pre-season that year. We were hurting after losing that grand final, and a lot of us were pretty disappointed with our own individual performances on the day. So we had a terrific pre-season, and then unfortunately that year we had a couple of tragic things. Desi English contracted cancer just before the start of the season, so he missed the whole year. He was having chemo and so forth. Peter Motley had his serious accident halfway through the year, sort of thing, and Motts was going to be a great footballer. He is just a real natural athlete, and probably ahead of his time in a lot of ways. And so what happened to him? If he wasn't such a fit, healthy young man, he didn't drink, didn't smoke, he lived a great life, and footy and fitness was just part and parcel of Motts. And if he wasn't such a fit, strong young bloke, he wouldn't have survived that. But and thank Christ he's with us today. But he couldn't be with us. And Bernie Evans, who's a good mate of mine, got reported in the second semi-final and got rubbed out for 1 week, which happened to be the grand final. So not only the loss the year before, but we had 3 boys who couldn't be out there with us for various different reasons and tragic reasons. And I think in the back of all our minds, we were going to go that little bit harder. No one would have beat us that day. We were on and ready to go, and it was 34 degrees and one of the hottest grand finals ever. But nothing was going to stop us that day.
It was certainly a hot day. You know what I remember about that day was it's the only time I ever saw Michael Tuck with the sleeveless
short-sleeve
jumper.
Yeah. And it was funny because I remember looking up in the crowd at one stage and, the old Bay 13 sort of thing, and it was like a cricket crowd. They, they had the zinc cream on, the shirts off, and and then, drinking cans and whatever they were doing sort of thing. But it looked like a cricket crowd, not a footy crowd, which was quite different.
Got to ask you two more things. First one, talk us through the Battle of Britain. So we're talking, I think it was 1987. We're talking end of season trip at the Oval in London. Carlton's playing North Melbourne, and all hell breaks loose on the field. Alistair Clarkson's basically king hit Carlton ruckman Ian Aitken, and it was just mayhem. And those of us looking back from Australia were thinking, what the hell is going on in this? It's an exhibition game.
Well, it was 2 or 3 weeks, I think, after the grand final in '87, and we'd just won. So obviously we'd been celebrating very hard and continued so, even on the plane on the way over. But North got beaten by Melbourne by over 100 points. I think it was an elimination final, and John Kennedy, their coach, he got them all in and trained them right through that final series, and basically told them they had one more match to prove that they wanted to be part of that shinbone of North Melbourne spirit and who's got it and who hasn't, so they come out firing, to be perfectly honest, and if they had they didn't associate with us before the game. We flew over on the same plane. We stayed at the same hotel. We never saw them until the match day, basically. And and we, as I said, we were still celebrating. But the funny thing was, we didn't want to win that game, because if you won that game, you had to. Both teams flew to Los Angeles, and you were staying over there for a week in Los Angeles. And but if you won the game, you had to go and play the final. I can't remember who they played. Might have been Geelong who they played in the final, so you had to fly to Canada to play another game of footy. Otherwise, you stayed in Los Angeles and had a good time for a week on the VFL at the time. So we had no intention of winning that game, and if they had have spoken to us beforehand, they come out, they were fired up and they were ready to go, sort of thing, and we weren't expecting it, and things just got right out of hand. Crazy.
What did your coach, Robert Wall, say to you at three-quarter time?
Well, it's probably the first time I've actually had a coach tell me to go out and whack someone. He basically looked at myself and Wayne Johnson and Jimmy Buckley and said to us, he said, look, I don't want Alistair Clarkson to walk off the ground, meaning he's going to be carried off today. And I chased him around for a little bit and tried my best, but I couldn't catch him. And it was, if they had played that Benny Hill music, it would have been probably appropriate. We were running around goalposts, running around the goal umpire, trying to get this little bugger, and he was too quick for me. I got home, I think it was 4 o'clock the morning of the match, so I was in no real condition to be playing footy. And when Donald McDonald whacked me at one stage, I got up and threw the ball away and had a crack at him. But got right out of hand, that game.
A very different era, Rhys. You're launching this campaign on the day of a match between your two beloved sides. So Sydney is playing Carlton. How do you think the Blues are going defensively, offensively? Obviously, they've got some weaponry up there. They've got a very good midfield. And Sydney, I had the great pleasure of seeing them just recently, and they look really good, Sydney. I think they're one of the teams it's theirs to lose type of thing. So are you confident Carlton can mount a challenge this year?
Oh yeah, I think some of the footy Carlton's played. That first quarter against Melbourne last week was that was finals footy. They were hard at it. They won all the contested possession. They got the ball forward. They converted. They did everything you'd want to do, and it wasn't until later in the match, that Melbourne got a bit of a sniff. And I think Carlton tend to go into a save the game mode at times, and I don't like it. I was sitting there, in the 5 minutes into the last quarter, going, we need to keep scoring. We need to score a few more goals to get that buffer ahead and be enough ahead that they can't catch us. But we had Charlie Curnow for 10 or 15 minutes in the back line playing for us. So, your chances of getting the ball down forward or scoring is limited when that happens. So, I don't like the way they go about trying to save games, but it gives the opposition plenty of chance as well. So I think they need to look at that. But overall, I think, with the injuries we've had so far, and I think once we get some of our better players back in we've relied on our probably our A graders. You got Cripps and Walsh and Curnow, Mackay and Wiedering in the back bit there. They're genuine 5 A graders there, and they've been able to help us, get us over the line in some matches we probably wouldn't have won in previous years. But the foot soldiers are doing their bit too and playing their part. So. But I think when we get Sard back in the back line, I think Jack Martin's going to be ready, a bit better for the run last week. He's a quality footballer too. So, and we'll get a few more players back into the team. I think Marchbank might come back this week as well. So, it's barring major injuries to any of our superstars, I think we're right in it. We can give it a shake. We've got genuine A graders, and that's what you need to be there at the end of the season and to win them.
And the Blood State Angels, Sydney, a.k.a. South Melbourne, you were part of the initial squad that went up to Sydney.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the first year we actually we lived in Melbourne and just flew up every second weekend basically and played footy at the SCG, which was I thought was a mistake at the time because but the VFL didn't have much money then. It was it was running on a shoestring budget, so. And then the first year we basically were a Victorian team just flying up there every second week to play games, and it was hard to get the crowds and that along and to come along. And we moved up the following season, and I spent 2 years living in Sydney and got quite used to it and enjoyed it up there. But it ended up the end of '84. They changed the administration of the Swans and they weren't going to honour our contracts, so I was lucky enough to be able to get out of my contract and move to Carlton.
Well, it was a good choice. Rhys, it's been fantastic to catch up. Thanks for your time. Good luck with your work with the Prader-Willi Syndrome, and please pass on our best to Cooper. And we'd love to catch up with you at some time in the future, mate. Good luck with your Blue Boys.
No worries, and thanks for the opportunity. And if anyone wants to Google 15 for 15 and donate, every little bit helps and helps the families and the kids who are suffering with this condition. So thanks to everyone who has donated so far and anyone who is going to.
We'll see you over in the West sometime.
Good on you, Glenn.